designers have a wrong understanding of, oh, I'm not getting a seat at the table.
If someone is joining a startup without any experience in the corporate world, like you did when you joined Razorpay, what advice would you give them?
Again, be too philosophical and a large question, but one thing I would definitely say is show up. I don't think HR as a function has evolved enough to handle these different generations. Being a designer doesn't always mean you need to flex your skills.
Hi everybody and welcome to season 1 of Behind the Screens. Here I have with me a very interesting, fun, young guest, Arun Chetty, who is previously the head of design at Razorpay and now he heads culture there. So hi Arun, welcome to our show Behind the Screens.
Thank you so much. I had a small smile when you said young. Because I'm hiring people who are 20, 21 and I'm a good 8 years away from them. And when you say young, I'm like, kahan se?
Yeah, that's
Getting into the 30.
29 now.
Oh yeah, I'm 29 too.
Yeah.
So relatable. I would be happy if someone called me young. So let's get to the questions. Early life, okay, that's what we're going to talk about. Let's take you back to your college days. How did you meet Harshil and Shashank, the founders of Razorpay?
So Harshil and Shashank, just like they founded Razorpay, they also founded a small student community, which they called as software development section. So every campus has these groups.
Yeah.
कि हम news लिखेंगे, हम drama करेंगे, हम ये करेंगे, वो करेंगे, and all of that, right? Again, disclaimer, I'm a biotech graduate from IIT Roorkee, and not sure if this is true at every other campus, but Roorkee mein, whenever you join as a biotech student, the first thing that you worry about is 4 saal baad naukri lagegi ki nahi lagegi. Because nobody hires a 4-year biotech graduate into a core biotech company. There's no market out there, right? You'd probably have to do a lot of higher studies and then come back. And by default, engineers, so the first question that you would ask is, what skills should I have? How should my resume look like?
Yeah.
What all should it have? How many internships should it have? How many groups should it have and all of that? In that pursuit itself, I met Harshil and Shashank, to be honest with you. Again, how I got into design while is a different story altogether. I was finding groups inside the campus where I could be a part of, where I know that I don't know anything, but I know how to handle Photoshop and CorelDRAW and all these design tools. Like I know this. I'm not saying I know design. I know how to operate these tools, right? So I was looking for multiple groups in the campus where they could utilize my skills on these tools. There were 2 software groups. One was an official group of Roorkee who handled the official website and all of that. Thoda sarkari naukri laga mujhe. But then there was this fancy group of young folks, who are challenging the status quo, saying, "Hum official kaam nahi karenge, hum hack karenge cheezon ko. We'll find ideas and we'll implement them." So that's how I met Harshil and Shashank in my first year, second semester. And Harshil is 2 years senior to me and Shashank is 3 years senior to me. And in fact, aajkal thoda nightmares aate hai thinking, what if I had not met them? I would have been somewhere else. I would probably be doing, masters or a PhD in genetic engineering in some US-based university somewhere. Yeah. All of this wouldn't happen.
Yeah, so I mean, how did you go from biotech to becoming a designer to heading design at Razorpay?
Nothing was planned. Even till last year, nothing was planned. Like nowhere I imagined that the particular designation hoga, a particular 7.5 billion valuation hoga, itna bada team hoga and all of that. I think everything happened on the go. Nowhere it was planned where I was sitting, oh, let me chart out what am I doing 5 years down the line. Let me start answering those questions and all. So my dad's a photographer, a professional photographer. So I always had a knack for computers like every other millennial out there. At least folks who are in our circle. So I started dabbling with these design tools, like I said. And I had no clue that design, especially product design and UX design, is a is anything more than a hobby. Like till my third year in college, I had no clue that these folks existed and इनको पैसा भी मिलता है. like I was doing my internship in biotech and all because I had to stamp one path for me very clearly. मैं मास्टर्स करने के लिए मेरे पास सब कुछ चेकलिस्ट होना चाहिए. इंटर्नशिप इन बायो, अ पेपर पब्लिश्ड इन बायो, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. बिकॉज middle class family, you go back to your father and say, I'm doing design. He'll be like, what is this? Like, masters kar rahe ho ki nahi kar rahe ho? Like, that comes off, immediately, right? So I was doing everything that was required for a master's and a PhD. And I had no clue. Fourth year, first sem, I came back to the college and I saw a bunch of juniors who interned at companies like Tiny Owl Housing. This was 2015, by the way. They came back and then in conversations they were like, "Itne lakh milte hai if you work as a designer." I was like, "Oh, isme paisa hai? Mujhe nahi pata." So that's when things happened and I was like, "Ye hobby nahi hai, seriously le sakte hai." And funnily speaking, this was the time when you go with an intention of, let me learn this tool, most of your Google searches will be, how can I do this in Photoshop? How can I do that in CorelDRAW? How can I do this in Illustrator? And most of them generally result in 70 plus tutorials on Photoshop. You remember these articles, right? And whenever I used to go through these websites and all, some of these tutorials were like, how do you make a button? How do you make this interface of Instagram? And I was like, ये सब कौन बनाता है? ये तो दिखने में भी beautiful नहीं है, right? I was more interested in, how did they manipulate this picture that looks like some 1880s ka, lighting and all of that. I was more interested on that side. Like, that was designed for me.
Yeah.
This was boring for me. But fate had it that put bread and butter on my plate, a few years later. I was so naive that I didn't know that was design. But more or less, that being in photography, my knack for learning these tools and my knack for developing that resume by showcasing these tools across and showing off, somewhere all of those tiny things here and there added up and resulted in me taking up design as a professional piece. And similar such instances resulted in me heading a large enough team at a large enough company. As I said, nothing was planned.
Very interesting. Yeah, being millennials and like going through the journey of that transition has been very interesting for us overall. And I can completely relate to what you're talking about in my journey also.
I'm Gen Z. I'm Gen Z.
Sure. Sure, yeah.
We're going to come to that.
In my mind. Sure. Although I don't understand them, that's a different conversation. But anyway.
Where I'm going to come to Gen Z in just a bit. So, okay. You're so young, right? Again.
Wow.
You're so young. And Razorpay is a, huge company, very famous, very great, right? How does it feel how did it feel being a design leader at Razorpay? And how did you get there so quickly, And what was that experience like?
See, again, right? When I say that all of this was not planned, I don't think this is just my answer. If you go back to the core founding folks at Razorpay, all those 7 to 8 folks who started, way back in 2015, everyone would have had the same answer. That, like, we never thought of making Razorpay a X crore business or a... We were into, there is this problem statement when it comes to money movement. Let's solve it. Like, they started with that. It was not about what are we doing tomorrow, etc. Again, it sounds very weird that, you never had any future plan. That's not what I'm getting to. But basically, nobody starts a company thinking, we'll make a generational company. We wanted to, be a unicorn one day and all of that, right? Most folks started with, there is a problem statement on there. We think there is a good enough market, let's solve it, right? Nobody thinks about 5 years down the line will be a unicorn and, and all of that, right? So when we hit the unicorn status, when we actually raised again, till 7.5 billion valuation, it all was a very, like, most conversations when that happened in that team of 7 to 8 folks who were there right from the early stages, all conversations were this only. Did you imagine this will happen? Did you imagine that, you will be doing this? Did you imagine that these many transactions will be happening from the software that we built? So many lives will be impacted. Did you imagine like 3,000 plus people would actually be signing an offer letter that is rolled out by you, right? So that feels amazing. I never thought that all of this would be like if you had to go back in time and catch that person strolling around in the campus of Roorkee, on a cycle, and then stop him and say, "Hey, just so you know, you will be this hairy kid, 8 years down the line doing this." It will be very weird of a conversation.
So when you kind of like you said that nothing was planned, but that wouldn't be. I mean, in this case, challenges are more difficult, right? Because you suddenly are thrown into an ocean and you were told to swim.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you start as a designer not knowing so many things.
Yeah.
But quickly enough, because the product is amazing.
Yeah.
And everything just functions. You have to now build a team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you have to build. Now someone who's 22, 23 at that time.
Yeah.
So build a team now. Then go to build. Okay, now we need 20 more people.
Yeah.
30 more people.
Yeah.
Now I believe it's an 18-member strong team.
Or like sometimes you do crisis hiring. Like you're like, oh my God, I thought I would be okay with this, but now suddenly I need a bunch of new people in there.
How was that journey, like building that, not knowing anything and going and falling into that ocean and building that big team?
Two things here, right? In fact, great statement. You're thrown into the ocean and you're told to swim when you can't even go into a swimming pool, right? This is something that we do daily at Razorpay. And this is in fact an exact statement, exact verbatim that I use every Monday. I take the onboarding session for everyone who joins at Razorpay as the culture head. And I use this statement saying that, folks, we are in the industry because we challenge the status quo and we don't micromanage. We're very high on ownership. So nobody will come and tell you, Rohan, you have to do A, B, and C. People will come to you and then say that, Rohan, you have to achieve this, figure it out. Nobody will come and tell you, I want you to build product A, product B, and launch it in market D, E, and F so that we'll have 10 million active users by 3 months. That's not how we talk at Razorpay. We basically say, Rohan, Dishti, we need 10 million active users, figure it out. You're a product person, go figure it with marketing, design, engineering, how that can be done. Go sit with sales, solutions, etc. Figure how it's done, right? So this is something that's the culture at Razorpay that we built. Like you will be thrown at situations where nothing is someone else's problem. You see something, you go fix it. That's one thing. That has, again, I'm not saying that this was so designed, it was on paper and, so it just like all the initial set of folks were like that.
Yeah.
We just figured it out, right? We had that nature of let's solve things, the hustle culture or whatever you tag it as, right? Now, talking about the question of how did you feel when you were told to build a team and all of that, I don't think it was ever about, oh, Arun, you need to build a team now. You need X number of designers. It was always about, you need one more designer. There's this one new thing that we're going to launch next year. Start planning for it now. It was never like, we're going to do this thing, you need 3 sets of designers, this skill, that skill, etc. etc. It was never like, figure out how do you set up a team. It was always about, figure out how you can have extra folks on the team with extra set of skills to, be successful. It was never like, build a team. It always started with, hire another designer. Make yourself redundant. Pick up a skill that you're probably not very good at, hire a designer for that.
Yeah.
Right? So it always started with that. And within no time, it was like, oh shit, there's a big team now.
You look back and you're like, huh? There's just one?
Yeah.
Like, what's happening?
I'm like, oh wow, what of a budget I eat away with Razorpay by having these many designers.
Very interesting, thing I thought about while you were saying this. Have you ever hired anybody who's older than you?
Yeah.
How did that feel like being, being the boss of someone who is older? Boss is like a very stringent corporate word, but how did it feel like hiring someone older to you and, having to lead that person, direct that person?
I don't think it was any out of the usual or any particular problems per se. It wasn't neither from my end nor from their end. They never had an issue that, again, I'm not just talking about me and my team. I see this across at Razorpay. Probably a 24-year-old is leading, a huge charter of 100 plus people reporting into him. Probably there's a 40-year-old in that team reporting into a 24-year-old, right? I don't see this as even a tiny problem at Razorpay where the people who are reporting into such folks have a problem or people who are managing that team have any particular problem, right? I think the reason why, if you were to ask me now, I would again go back to how we kind of removed micromanagement. the problem comes in it when, the bossing around is all about micromanagement itself, right? Like I'd call someone a boss, of mine. If that person comes into the room and says, I want you to do this exactly this way, no questions asked. Or my ideas are always thrown around saying, no, that's not good. Where my ideas are not encouraged even for me to speak up. That was never the option at Razorpay. That was not something that we wanted to build either. Right? So in fact, I was having a conversation with our marketing head recently where we were debating about the employer branding at Razorpay. And a very beautiful line came up, which is just like Razorpay wants to support entrepreneurs in the market where we are helping them manage their money in their businesses, we want to support intrapreneurs inside Razorpay, where everyone is an entrepreneur inside Razorpay, where everyone is like, this is not a job for them. This is basically them starting up inside Razorpay. Like if someone's handling a small product inside Razorpay, consider that your startup. Figure it out. Right. So that more or less gives you a lot of ownership, throws you into the ocean where you'll have to swim all on your own. Also learn while you're drowning. Right?
Little bit.
Yeah. Little bit. Little uncomfortable for sure.
Yeah.
But the results are amazing.
Yeah.
Right? I work with a set of people who are so energetic, and sometimes you come across people who are like, oh shit, I had no clue I was working with this person all this while. He was such a great person, right? And people who quit Razorpay, who started up, I see the same values being implemented in their own organizations, no matter how tiny or how large they are, right?
Yeah.
Feels amazing.
Okay, so there's a statement, good design is good money. Is that statement true? And if it is, like, has that made more money for Razorpay?
I'd like to tweak that statement a little bit. I'd like to replace the word design by experience.
Yeah.
And good experience is good money. I mean, I can take a bunch of examples where if you order food, and it's not just about how you're digitally ordering food, but also how you're receiving it. And in this entire cycle, anywhere the experience goes wrong, you might not, order again from that place, right? So good experience is definitely good design. Because anything that takes a lot of effort from people, anything that makes people think a lot more, they would not like to do it again and again, right? Like one of the reasons why you would not think about this particular door handle is because it works for you. But let's say if it stops working one day, then you will immediately notice that, oh, there was a door handle here and it's not working anymore, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely good experience is good design. At Razorpay, we definitely made money because of it. To give an example, we started Razorpay at a time when there were enough competitors in the market. We were not the first ones. Right? We're top players in the industry now, but we are top because not because we started first. We weren't the first. There were enough 3 to 4, competitors out there in the market. This is way back in 2014 and 2015. But the reason we worked out because we treated all those problems as product problem statements and we solved for the experience. Where earlier it would have taken you 3 to 4 months to get acceptance to a payment gateway, where it would have taken you 3 to 4 months to integrate a payment gateway from a tech aspect. We made it under half an hour, where we would in fact outrightly challenge founders saying that order a pizza, start integrating Razorpay. Before the pizza arrives, you would have Razorpay fully integrated into your systems. And a lot of people took up that challenge and we won.
Nice.
Right? And that's great experience for you.
Yeah.
Right? Nothing digital. Probably a good part of it digital where the way we written down these documentation and how you're going through it, how we very easily made all these plugins available for you. Right? So all of that made us money. Like if let's say we had followed the exact same suite, exact same experience that our competitors had, we would have been another player in the market. I don't think we would have been where we are today, where we are the topmost player in the country, right? So good experience is good design.
Right.
But did this really happen? Like you did this?
The pizza challenge? Yeah, it did. There's multiple tweets out there.
Nice, yeah.
Where this founder, in fact, wrote a tweet tagging Shashank saying, I met Shashank the other day and he challenged me for a pizza challenge of integration with Razorpay. And under 30 minutes, I could integrate Razorpay.
Oh,
Wow, that's, yeah.
it reminds me of one of the journeys where, previously when in the previous organization that I worked in, we built how you would, now it's common, but how you would get loan in just one tap.
Yeah.
Just one tap, you enter 2 things and we built a system that credible people would get it.
Yeah.
And it would have been.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it's something cool.
That's great experience, right? So, and then I'm sure it would have worked out wonders for you and, resulted in like amazing outcomes.
Correct. Of course. I remember. So, yeah, Rishi.
Yeah, I mean, I love understanding this entire concept about experience, like talking about how you have to move beyond that digital asset, you have to move around it. And, the more leaders that we're talking to, the more the podcast episodes are moving towards, it feels like the experience is more like a distraction in a way where, you're not concentrating on the task at hand. You're trying to look at it from another perspective, which can remove that pressure from what it's supposed to do. Like if that same guy is sitting and watching the person integrate Razorpay for 30 minutes, he would feel daunted about it, compared to you're getting distracted that, okay, yeah, maybe it's as simple as ordering a pizza and gets done. And, you're thinking about that and makes it technology so much more adaptable.
Correct.
So lovely. Okay. One interesting question, on your journey. You were a design leader and then you moved towards being the head of culture. How did that happen and how has that transition been?
I have been answering this for the last 3 months now. But yeah, so it did not happen overnight. It wasn't like overnight I decided, chalo kuch na karte hai. Aaj kuch tufani karte hai.
Abhi ye boring ho gaya.
Abhi ye boring ho gaya. Chalo kuch aur karte hain. That wasn't the case. So 5 years ago actually, again, with the help of Harshal, Shashank and other co-founding folks at Razorpay, I set up a small team, a voluntary team actually, called as the Culture Committee. And thought of Culture Committee came in because we wanted culture not to be an afterthought. Like we came into the room with the concept of when we set up Razorpay, we were all aligned. An unspoken thing. Everyone was behaving in the same way. Everyone had a similar framework of making decisions, even though we were not trained on it. Nobody gave us a blueprint that Harshal, here is how you will make the frame, you will make decisions. And rest folks just blindly follow. Aisa nahi tha.
Yeah.
Everyone more or less came out as the same personality as to how should we run an organization. And we felt that if that is not promoted enough and that is not reviewed often, it will go for a toss. So I, along with Ayush Bansal, who's currently the general manager for banking at Razorpay, again, a part of the core founding team, we set up a voluntary team called as Culture Committee, where we recruited interesting folks in the organization who had their own daily jobs at Razorpay, who were super enthusiastic in helping us build an amazing culture and setting that up. Last year, when I was discussing with Harshal at a few places, the thought actually came from him. He put this, as they say, kida in my mind. Probably culture is your thing. Like, he never said that design is not your thing.
Yeah.
He said, yaar, ye interesting problem hai. And I believe tu kar sakta hai. And when I dabbled with that role and I started writing a JD for myself, started writing a job description for myself, ki agar if I were to hire myself into this role, what will be a part of it? And again, a lot of practices went to it, a lot of research went into it, reading a lot of stuff, meeting a lot of people inside and outside Razorpay. I decided this is something that is way too challenging, way too interesting, and I don't know how to do it. So I thought, yeah, this is something that I can definitely imagine myself doing. And another thought that came to my head was 7 years ago when I had an admit from Georgia Tech for, masters in genetic engineering, and I had offers from a bunch of companies for design. I couldn't imagine myself sitting at a bench in a laboratory with pipettes and, mixing stuff as a genetic engineer. Yeah. But I could definitely imagine myself working alongside my friends, doing something that I like, which is design. I could sense a similar framework here where I could imagine myself 6 or 7 years down the line. Again, this is not like a plan, which I never do. As my earlier conversation.
You don't have a meeting to have a meeting to have a meeting.
Yeah, I could imagine myself doing it. It wasn't something like, oh, I don't know how will I do it. Right? It was like, I don't know how will I do it, but I can figure it out and I'll have fun. And there was enough support from the founders also saying that we also feel you're the right person to take it up. So that's how the switch happened.
Nice.
But why did you feel that this problem statement was interesting. After you built your JD, you took that decision. Because before that, you were just researching on whether this is the right fit for me or not. But then after you built something, you realize that this is the road. What was that? What was that exciting part in it?
I might go a little philosophical here, but bear with me, right?
Of course, no.
Again, I can say this for most folks at Razorpay. I never considered this as a job where I thought I'll do something, then I'll get money by the end of the month, and that'll go for a raise 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, promotions honge and all of that. I never thought, even now, I don't think about it. I always thought about Razorpay as something that we as friends came along and we started building it. Ye hamara hai. This is our house now, right? And you wouldn't want that house to go for a toss, right? Like you would take any measure to make yourself and your family be at the best health possible, mentally, physically, whatever, right? Razorpay is somewhere like that for me. Sounds very philosophical, very dramatic, like Bollywood movie premise and all of that.
I get it.
Yeah, but most early folks who've been a part of any other organization feel that way. That, hey, this is my company. I built it, right?
Yeah.
So that was a huge factor where just the concept of I'll be responsible for defining the way Razorpay works was very exciting for me. You know, I get to be a part of this problem statement, right? Like imagine 10 years down the line, if you're super, super, super successful, and if that success can be routed back to the culture at Razorpay, I can somewhere take a tiny credit saying that I was responsible for it. वो thought काफी exciting था मेरे लिए.
Correct.
And I thought, यार, मैं ले सकता हूँ ये. It isn't any alien for me because I had some roots on the culture side because of the voluntary culture team that I set up. Although it wasn't a huge thing. ऐसा नहीं था कि it took up 50% of my bandwidth when I was doing design. It took 10 to 20% of my bandwidth. But it still was a very enjoyable piece, right? It's like that saying, right? When you enjoy work, work doesn't feel like work. And I enjoy doing this.
Yeah. I mean, I can somewhere relate to you again in this because as a design leader, it's very important to have a great culture because most of your work ends up revolving around designing and getting things through and done. And then you have people with you and people are people.
That's the interesting piece,
yeah.
right? When people get surprised when I say that I was a designer and now I'm a part of this culture team and I'm a people person now and all of that. People get surprised. But I honestly take it as another problem statement altogether.
Yeah.
As a designer, I am solving for users who would be users of Razorpay as a product and a service. As a culture person, I'd be responsible for the experience of employees who are working for Razorpay. I see it as any other user statement. I see it as any other user problem. How will I solve it? Over there, I would have been solving it, building experiences digitally or whatever that is. Here, I'm again solving for their experience in some other fashion altogether. But the problem solving framework is still the same. The thought is still the same.
You just move from B2B.
I was B2B earlier. So
Yeah.
I am B2E now. E for employees.
A question that comes out of, culture is a company always has a certain set of values, everyone. Their company values, and then there is a design team or any team, product team, engineering team. They have their own set of values, the team values. How did you ensure as a designer and now in culture that your team follows your team values, but also adheres, not adheres is the wrong word, but
I get what you're saying.
respects the company?
Or relates to the company's values.
This is in fact a part of my job charter now.
Yeah.
As someone heading culture. Long answer, right? When, every organization has certain set of cultural values. They write it down. Some just put it on a poster, some put it on a wall, some use it in their daily life, some don't. I want these values to be the fundamental principles on which every decision at Razorpay is made. Right from why are meetings structured in so-and-so way, why is a particular tool being used in a so-and-so team. I want every single decision to route back to the values that we have. That's my utopian vision for as the culture head. It's not there as of today, I'll be very honest with you. Right? Although I will definitely consider Razorpay to be one of the best companies out there to work for when it comes to how good the culture is. I don't think we also are at that stage, that utopian ideal stage, right? I want to reach there. That will only happen when these values, first thing, do not contradict themselves. As a part of my research into writing this job description, I was going through the values that most companies say out loud.
That's funny. What's come to my mind?
Where they have their fancy jobs page where they write down, we operate on these 9 values, etc., etc. One of the values will say we work hard.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
And I'm like, it's fair, you work hard, good for you. The second value says we party harder. or something like work-life balance. So now, as an employee at that organization, if my manager calls me on a Saturday, right? So do I pick up the call because I'm working hard? Or do I cut the call because work-life balance is there in the picture? What should I do?
Yeah.
There's a contradiction right here. Right? So first thing that most organizations do wrong is in framing of these values itself. Right? Most organizations by default go through their peer organizations and say that there are these fancy values, some of them we should just adopt. Why should we adopt them? Nobody questions that. Again, I'm not saying that most organizations do it. There are enough organizations who do a very subjective exercise on what should be their values and what should not be their values, and I adore those organizations. Now, remove those folks who are doing contradictory values. Let's consider the organizations who are doing values in the right way. Inme se, most companies, again, don't translate these values into day-to-day blueprints. For most folks, these are just fancy posters on a wall, right? Move fast and break things. Good, great, right? Yeah. But I'm joining this team as a legal person, or a QA engineer, or a content marketer, or whatever, right? How should I move fast and break things? What is move fast and break things for a lawyer at an organization? What is move fast and break things for a design leader? What does move fast and break things for a tech intern? And people don't need these preachy stuff, by the way. There is enough preachy stuff. You Google or ChatGPT mein pucho, what is culture? What is this organization's culture? You will find fancy verbatim, on 6 statements, 7 statements, 12 statements or whatever. But how these statements are coming into the picture for me to do my job well, nobody answers that. Nobody has it also, right? When that happens, that is when your question gets answered as to how is the organization values are translating into these subcultures of how are designers functioning, how are engineers functioning, how are product managers functioning, etc., etc. Because that contradiction should not happen here also. So these subcultures in teams, in peer groups, at leadership level, at an intern level, at a fresher level, at every function like sales, marketing, design, multiple places, etc. Geography is a huge thing, by the way. Something that I've been learning very recently, right? You might have heard this, right? The Indian startup ecosystem is all about hustle culture.
Yeah.
Oh, Indians hustle a lot and all of that, right? Fair, good thing. But let's consider you folks, Indian organization. You acquire a company in, let's say, Japan or China or Malaysia or Saudi Arabia. Do you think they'll be hustling the same hustle culture over there? I am not sure. Right. Geography also plays a huge role. I'll give a very...
Japan is even a fast-paced thing. I don't think Mumbai and Bangalore will have the same
Culture. Exactly.
Exactly. Right. Forget Bombay and Bangalore. Bombay and Pune.
Yeah, Bombay.
Right there. Vastly different cultures altogether. Right. Geography also plays a huge role. The education plays a huge role. Your industry plays a huge role. For example, we are a fintech organization. You will find people from the tech side. You will find people from the art side. You will find people from the marketing domain. You'll also find people from the banking domain. When I say banking, what comes into your mind?
Suits.
When I say tech, what comes into your mind? Flip-flops?
Yeah. Dark black glasses.
Yeah. Beards.
Beards.
Or when I say designers, hair.
Yeah.
Beards. Stereotypes, sure.
Yeah.
But you get what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? In fact, this is something that came out in my studies recently. We as an organization are heavy on challenging the status quo. For every problem statement, come up with at least 3 ideas. One of them should be out of the box. One of them should not be possible today. Like throw some solution which is not possible today. I'd love to hear about that. The reason why we have that value again is not because it was fancy, but because Razorpay started because we challenged the status quo on existing markets, existing gateways, existing payment solutions. That's how we started, and we believe in it, right? And that has definitely shown way too many results for us. I can't go to a Southeast Asian country where it is frowned upon to question your seniors and tell them to challenge the status quo, right?
Yeah.
And if we acquire an organization over there or we set up a team over there, how will I sensitize this value of challenging the status quo whilst keeping in mind that culturally they're not the folks who are comfortable questioning someone. They feel questioning your seniors is a disrespect. We feel questioning anyone is a chance for innovation, right? So don't have an answer on how to solve it, but you see how subcultures get formed, right? So again, huge answer to the original question, but I hope I...
So one thing that you mentioned was about having a culture committee at Razorpay. And, that reminds me that at Pineapple, at a very young, within our almost second year, we started a culture committee, although we were a very small team within that. And the culture committee idea came to us from the Office series that was there, where Michael is a horrible boss and, he always wants a party or a cake or something or the other. And they built a small culture committee. And what I loved about that culture committee was it was made of all of the employees that were there, the team members in it, 2 of them, and the HR with it, where the HR would manage the budgets and the team members would basically decide what would suit Michael for the parties that are there. And at Pineapple, we party a lot, as hard as we work. And I was like, okay, Rohan and I are finding it really tight to do this. And let's build a culture committee. Let people have control over what, the culture of Pineapple should be. So we built our own culture committee and we put our HR in the culture committee. And our HR, looked at everything suddenly from a very different perspective. Mm-hmm. And as a design leader, I tend to work very closely with my HR because I want the right team members to be there in Pineapple. I want the right team members that are culturally aligned to the Pineapple team that is there. So how important do you think HR's role is as part of building also a culture in a company? And does the HR at Razorpay sit in your culture committee and make decisions alongside you all?
Yeah. First of all, I'd love to have that kind of a cool story for how culture committee started at Razorpay. where I can also say that, what this show...
They spoke about it.
That's where the idea stemmed in from. But again, jokes aside, there is no particular criteria as what function are you handling at Razorpay decides should you be a part of the culture team or not, right? Anyone who's enthusiastic about impacting the culture at Razorpay is a part of it. Now, the thing where HR overlap comes into the picture, first of all, I want to, again, another huge thought over here. Most companies out there, culture is a part of HR, generally speaking.
Yeah.
I disagree. Culture should be a part of everyone's responsibility. And it's also something that can't just run bottom up. Yeah. Right? It can't be like a set of the fresh 3 engineers, they are responsible for the rest of the organization's culture. That also doesn't happen, right? It's enough bottom up as it is top down. Most of it should come top down, right? Now, in all of this, culture is the responsibility of every leader, every HR, every person at any organization. Now, coming to the culture team, what we do, we are more or less the eyes and ears of the organization, where we become the user researchers for the employees. We figure out, we're talking about ownership. Let's see how that ownership comes into the picture for designers, how it comes into the picture for sales folks, how it comes into the picture between sales and marketing, and all of these nuances, right? So we define those practices, we promote those practices, we review those practices. All of these activities, it's not just about research, it's about taking that research, analyzing it, giving feedback back to the leaders, saying that, hey, your organization, like your team, is low on ownership because of these practices. Could be high on ownership if you implement these practices. No matter how big of a leverage I have inside Razorpay because I've been a part of the early team, etc., I'll be an alien to most teams. I'll be someone who came into the meeting room suddenly one day and told me to behave in a certain way, right? I'll always be an alien to them. So that's where I need these HR leaders, HR partners, leaders of those teams to be on my side in implementing these practices. For example, at this scale at Razorpay, agility as a value for design means investing in a design system,
Yeah.
right? Agility is a poster on a wall. Build a design system and improve it and scale it up is a practice, is how agility comes into the picture for designers, engineers, and PMs. If the design leader, engineering leader, design HR, engineering HR, etc., are not on my side in implementing this project altogether or implementing this idea altogether, I'll probably be speaking to a wall.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where HRs and leaders come into the picture, not just for the culture committee, but in my current role as well, right? Where I am now, I have to partner with all these leaders across Razorpay and take their help in setting up the best culture, the best values, the best processes. And they should be the ones who will hear from me if something's going wrong in that.
When you are hiring people across ages, we call them the baby boomers, we call them even millennials.
I love those memes that come, like, I see those memes every time on Instagram. You're a millennial.
So how, and I've read a couple of reports, I'm not going to cite them, but somewhere they say that it's very difficult to work with the Gen Z, right? And as someone who now have to hire probably everyone from the Gen Z, right? What do you think of? Do you think that in your experience it's been easy? It's been difficult? Do you think they're the same? What's that really like?
Again, too early for me to answer, or even I don't think I've hired way too many people either for me to come with some quantitative analysis.
But like, I would say, like, culturally, if you're following a particular, you are relating to the company's culture, work ethics, everything that exists there. Everyone behaves very differently, right? The baby boomers are more dedicated. They want to be more involved in, because they come from an older generation. They are more loyal. They stick around more. They had lesser options in their life when they were older. They're more responsible. When you're into a millennial phase, you're just like worried all the time, and you're like, okay, how can I help? How can I figure it out? How can I do everything? And then you have Gen Z that comes and that's laid back. That would be, like, okay, great. I want my independence. I want to be able to do this by myself. I don't want too much involvement happening. And my loyalty, it's limited. It's not so much about loyalty, but I need to enjoy where I am and really, have a great experience. It needs to be cool.
It needs to be a cooler organization.
They're more about work-life balance, everything. So
Whatever you spoke right now, I see them as stereotypes, to be very honest.
yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Stereotyping, saying that the older generations are a lot more loyal and the new ones need a lot more freedom. Again, does freedom mean zero loyalty or low loyalty? I think that's a very different question altogether, right? Summarizing the question into, is there any difference, or should there be any difference in approach, in building a team or handling a team of different generations, both as a design leader, as a culture person, or a CEO, or whoever that is, right? I think there needs to be a difference in approach for sure. Not just because these are different generations, but because these are different environments altogether. For example, if let's say this was 1990s, right? I don't think the three of us sitting in this room would have had so much information about this particular organization in Malaysia is working in so and so way. This particular organization in New Zealand has so and so values and so practices, and we should have it, right? Information wasn't so rampantly and freely available. So our understanding about how organizations work, what's an ideal culture, etc., mostly came from books or meeting someone, right? But now I can sit here and talk about how the Google Maps team works differently from, let's say, the Google Docs team, because I've read enough about it. I have enough connects. I can easily probably call up someone right now, talk about them, strike a conversation with them, understand, etc. Now information is a lot more available. So the playing ground is a little different, right? And with that information itself, a lot of nuances come into the picture. And in fact, I've been listening to a few podcasts on how movies are made and how a few years ago we were okay with a lot of sexist things that were happening in movies. Right? 10, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
a protagonist running behind, the actress was considered heroic. But if you see that now, you'd be like, that's wrong.
Yeah.
We were the same folks 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not like something happened in the last 10 years, right? We matured because information is far more available. We started understanding things a lot more differently. The world is a little different, etc. Right? Same things apply to work as well, where how a particular generation treats work, work-life balance, communication with each other. You've talked about loyalty as well. I don't have a strong answer on how that changes with generation, but still I can take that as an attribute. How these come into the picture is a little different. And this is where I'd like to make a very strong statement. I might get cancelled also. I don't think HR as a function has evolved enough to handle these different generations. I think most HRs that I speak to are more or less dealing with things, thinking this is still 1980s and 1970s. I'm not saying that every HR is like that. I think HR as a function altogether is probably, is late on a revolution of sorts. Right? I would love to see that happening. And you can't just treat it as a product and a business problem statement. You have to, some leader has to start thinking about this as a people problem statement as well.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
So, Chetty, I want to touch upon this part that you said, and we had a short conversation on this before. Right. Why do you think HR as a function is not evolved in the last 20 years?
Again, very strong biased answer. Very,
It's your opinion, everything in this.
yeah. All my opinion.
We claim that, yeah. Show it to the camera.
All my opinion. No, I've been, okay, let me ask this question, right? You've been in the industry for a good 10 plus years, so are you. I'm sure you can name 5 great product managers you worked with. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can name 5 great engineers you worked with.
Yeah.
Can you name 5 great HRs you worked with? I'm sure you work with more than 5 HRs in your life.
Yeah, a couple of them.
But why isn't that number as big as, let's say, engineers or designers?
Yeah.
Right? Or as of today, most organizations, why do people feel uncomfortable reaching out to an HR? Why is the manager hearing first that, hey, I'm quitting? Why isn't the HR sensing it far earlier? Why isn't the person comfortable enough to reach out to the HR? Right? Forget about all of this, right? I'm guessing there are 4 or 5 HR partners at Pineapple as well.
Yeah.
Someone handling the tech team, someone handling the design team, etc.
Because we're a small studio, we have like one HR that basically.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. But let's consider a different organization at a different scale altogether.
Yeah.
Would it be a problem if I move the design HR partner to the tech side? Can you or can you not move a design HR to a tech HR? You can easily, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, mostly HRs are look like an administrator of completing.
A moderator of sort.
Yeah, a moderator of.
Typically, you can understand
Yeah.
the function.
Or an operational specialist,
Yeah.
right? An HR should know how to handle performance discussions, appraisal discussions, firing discussions, policy making, etc., etc. Right?
Yeah.
But I come with a very idealistic scenario in mind. A design HR should probably be a little different from an engineering HR or a sales HR. And in fact, something that you should ask in your podcast to leaders also, right? When was the last time their HR attended a design sprint planning meeting or a design project review meeting, silently sitting in a corner, observing everything, instead of coming in 6 months saying that, hey, let's do performance reviews, right? I'd love to have an HR partner with whom I can take the project of developing my team. If let's say both of you are a part of my team, I'd love to have my HR partner and I take up a project of growing you, and growing you all together. Yeah. I, by default, know the sense of how designers work. HRs, by default, know the sense of how an employee works. I want them to go a little deeper, get the sense of how designers work, right? Like, I'd love it if, let's say, the HRs are in my conversation, thinking, hey, there is this new design tool out there, which if implemented might make our team far more efficient. I've observed your team generating GIFs using this particular tool. I saw this new tool out there here. I've been talking to this particular team and they use this other tool. Very nice, we should do it. Right? Or something like, I observed your designers in this handover meeting with engineers. I think your designers need a lot more training on how they can frame their ideas far better, how they can hold their design decisions instead of just bending the knee and saying that, yeah, you're correct.
Yeah.
I'd like to see those conversations happening a lot more. And honestly, I don't see HRs doing that.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. Like, I think for small organizations like Pineapple, we're small, but we have big minds. But the idea is that our HR has to really know our designers in and out, when they're picking them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times Rohan and I might not have the time to make the first pick of who would be the right person to go into the second round of interview, third round of interview, and so on. To save our time as design leaders, we want to make sure that the right people are coming into the team to spend that half an hour interviewing someone to get them in.
Yeah.
And if the HR doesn't have clarity of what we are missing or what we need and selecting the right team member to put that person in the team, it actually helps your company grow and, work more efficiently.
I think we do a fair enough job in training the talent acquisition part. So HR as a function has multiple sub-functions, right? One is talent acquisition. How do you get people into the team?
Yeah.
One is HR business partners, which is how's the team performing, right? How's the entire life at organization is going on. Then there is people operations and all, how are salaries processed, how does payroll function, all of those things, right? Those things I'll not handle. Those things are pretty sorted in the industry. Enough things to learn from. And I'm fine with it. I think we do a fair job at the talent acquisition side because we put an OKR on them to hire X number of designers into the team. And we train them that, hey, when you look at someone's portfolio, here's what we want you to look at.
Yeah.
Here are the keywords that you need to look at. Here's how you evaluate a resume of a designer. Here's how you can sell the concept of design and design at Razorpay to them on their first call, etc., right? That happens pretty good. Most organizations that I've talked to. But I don't think we train HRs specifically saying that, hey, you're going to be an HR for engineers. You're going to be an HR for marketeers. Here are the problems that they generally face. Here's the growth ladder for a marketeer. Here's the growth ladder for a solutions person, for a sales person, for a growth person, for a design person. Here's what they look at. Here's how the industry is changing, right? How many design HRs are speaking to other design teams, learning what fancy things they're doing, right? Like, how should a hackathon be different for designers? How should a hackathon be different for engineers, right? I think when I say we, again, could be my biased approach of very few set of people that I personally spoke to, might not be the industry standard out there, right? Again, disclaimer over there. From folks that I spoke to, I think we could do a far better job in this domain.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the problems that I, faced was I was trying to look for an HR only from other design studios to join my design studio to see that hiring for designers is very different than hiring for engineers, like you said, or other companies. And every time we looked at an HR, they would have the same thinking, principles, abilities that came in. I found that very interesting because designers, the design leader really depends on their HR to find the right team member.
Yeah.
To build that team for them, because oftentimes they might not have that much of, clarity about the outside recruitment, environment that comes in. They know inside what they want, but they don't know that what is happening externally as designers, growth, etc. That's happening. Like, for example, a lot of UX UI designers, there are 1 million UX UI design jobs today in India. Every single person is a designer. A lot of people are leaving engineering, a lot of people are leaving architecture and different domains and getting into design, right? Now they come from such different environments and coming into UX UI design. If my HR is not able to profile that person's skill set well, and from a very different perspective, right? Just because that person is an architect, they might have certain critical thinking skills that maybe someone who comes from a graphic role, another role comes into my organization. HR is looking for jobs in design studios, right? They have to integrate into the culture of design. What would you say for them? How can they add value into a design studio in more detail, in more depth? If you can tell us more about that.
Yeah. While you were speaking, there's another thought that came in when you said that engineers moving into design, PMs moving into design, architects moving into product design, UI design, etc. How many stories have you heard where someone moved into HR?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's a different conversation altogether. Like, why is an HR a very glorified role where everyone's looking up to them and like, oh, that's a challenging role, I should be a part of it. If that is not happening, then probably the function requires some level of changing. Right?
Yeah.
That's where my biased opinion comes into the picture for the earlier conversation, right? Coming to this one as to how an HR person, again, what you've talked about on hiring is again on talent acquisition. I'll keep that aside for now. I'll talk about HR partners. After hiring, how they come into the picture and defining your life at an organization, right? I think an HR partner should, by default, understand the persona of a designer,
Yeah.
right? Just like I said, how every leader's responsibility, especially design leaders' responsibility, just like you think about customers, how they're using your service and product, think about your team also, how, like, define their life experience at your organization, right? Now, that life experience for a designer could be a little different from any other role. Could be different for engineers, marketers, etc., etc. An HR person should probably figure out that persona. How can you do that? Interact with people in your team, understand how they, like, what their life cycle is like, right from picking up a certain OKR to how that translates into a bunch of projects, how that is implemented, what are these wireframes that we keep talking about, how are they built, what is the use of these processes that you use on design, how do you interact with stakeholders like product management, project management, engineers, etc. What ticks you off? What are your aspirations as designers? Given enough free hand, what would you like to do? And things like the organization vision is so and so and so. Do you think your job is aligning to that or not? For example, the vision for Razorpay is to be the one-stop money movement platform for businesses, right? Now, someone who's designing a video ad for a product. Now, if you ask that person inside Razorpay, hey, how are you responsible for setting up a one-stop money movement platform for businesses? That person should be able to answer it, right? And are people able to answer it or not? Are they tracing back to the vision and the values, etc.? Should be the job of an HR partner, right? That only happens when you understand the persona of a designer as a design HR, right?
Yeah.
Like, company culture is not about, oh, I joined and then I got a MacBook. Oh, I got Diwali gifts. That's not company culture, right? Company culture is the 10 people that you work with on a daily basis. How's your life with them? How are you growing with them, right? And then HR and the leader of your team have the highest impact when it comes to that, right? That culture.
On that,
Yeah.
HR and design leaders, ideally, I think, should work together towards building their team and towards understanding what their team needs. A lot of times, like my HR does this, and I want more of it as a design leader. That there are some hidden sentiments, emotions. There are some hidden conversations that go on, and the HR tends to know that and know these things, but they don't tend to guide the design leader on how to navigate those things. A design leader might be like, this is not working out for me.
Yeah.
Maybe, they've reached a frustration point, they've tried everything, and they go like, we need to find somebody else.
Yeah.
And an HR will just go like, okay, I'll find somebody else for you. Instead, an HR saying that, I understand your personality, I understand your designer's personality, but I really think, Dishri, that this person is the right fit for you. How do you get there? Or what are your thoughts on this?
I'll go back to that answer itself, right? It's the growth of every individual and the growth of the team together is the responsibility, and that should be taken as a project. It's a long project, by the way.
Yeah.
How am I growing this tea as an individual designer and also a person in the team should be a 10-year project for me. How is she growing from, let's say, a junior designer to probably, a head of design in so and so place, both on core design skills as well as people skills, soft skills, etc. should be a project as a manager and an HR partner. Something that came up in a recent conversation So I've been meeting leaders across the industry, HR leaders and otherwise, because I want to know what makes great culture. I want to learn these tiny practices that people do so that I can just learn from them. So I met an HR head recently, very early stage startup, Series A funded. So this person and I were debating, and then I basically said to him that, hey, there are a lot of water cooler conversations that happen where people rant.
Yeah.
You go for a smoke, you go for a coffee in the balcony, and then you start ranting about everything. A process, a product, a practice, anything. Right?
Your leader.
Your leader,
Yeah.
anything, right? In all of these rants, there are also ideas.
Yeah.
For example, I and Rohan could probably go for a coffee and probably I'm ranting saying that this manager, this team, this person,
ये ऐसे ही होना चाहिए था.
ऐसे नहीं होना चाहिए
इतना ही कर देते तो हो जाता.
ये मीटिंग ना थोड़ा अगर यही करती ना वो मजा आ जाता.
हाँ.
It's a rant as well as a tiny idea, right?
Yeah.
Most of the times those ideas are there in the balcony. They are banters. They are just rant sessions, right? These ideas and these rants stay there and never come out. There's no incentive for you and I to go back to this team and say, this team, this is your feedback.
Correct.
You should have done this. Nobody says that.
Correct.
Some people do. Most people don't. So I was debating about this with this HR leader, and this person is like, you know what I did to get those ideas? I gave a budget to my HR partner, and instead of the HR partners doing a one-on-one where it becomes a very formal discussion that, oh, I am now Chetty Arun, HR at Razorpay. I'm going to take feedback on how your life at Razorpay is. Now tell me these things. It's a very formal thing, right? So this person gave some budget to the HR partner as the HR head, saying that randomly take few people saying that, अरे यहाँ पे coffee shop खुला है, चल coffee पी के आते हैं. Be friends with them. Be a part of those rant sessions. Remove the branding that you are the moderator for the organization. You are the protector of the organization. वो brand हटाओ अपने role से. Make people comfortable enough that they come with you and they rant with you. They rant with you about their manager, right? They gossip with you. I'm fine with it, right?
Yeah.
Go do that, and silently, basically, that's your one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Instead of a formal one-on-one, उनको भी नहीं पता कि तुम ये कर रहे हो. Go do that. Give me all the information.
Yeah.
I'll be responsible to make those changes. Beautiful setup, right? I want more people to do that. But again, a lot of nuances in this. That setup will work only when that feedback is implemented correctly and not the other way around where, oh, Rohan, I heard you said this. You will lose trust in your HR again,
Yeah.
right? Oh, whenever she calls me for a coffee, I should not go now.
Exactly.
Right. So a lot of nuances are there for this system to work out, but such a brilliant system. I want HRs to be everywhere as a wall, just be there, listen to things, just shadow everything, be a part of a design interview, just shadow how people are interviewing, be a shadow in handover meetings, be a shadow everywhere, follow a designer. So much that as a psychologist, you're learning design enough that probably one day you can turn into a designer also, right?
Yeah.
If that happens to me, from an HR perspective and from a leader perspective, I think a lot of these subcultures that we talked about can be controlled in a nice way, which can roll back into the organizational values. All of it will result in setting up a great team, but all utopian scenarios we're talking about.
Scenarios.
All right. So coming back a little bit for young designers in the industry, change of topic. If someone is joining a startup without any experience in the corporate world, like you did when you joined Razorpay, what advice would you give them?
Again, way too philosophical and a large question. But one thing I would definitely say is show up. Right? For example, the reason why I could move into different roles altogether, I could think of joining a different team or even think that, oh, I can collaborate and contribute into that team a little better, is because I showed up when non-design things were also happening. Right? When a marketing meeting was happening, I just showed up. Right? I think showing up for a lot of stuff will make a lot of sense. instead of shying away that, hey, probably that's not part of my job. That's not what I was hired for. Probably as a designer, you will learn something on design or non-design if you attend a sales meeting. Who knows? Right?
Yeah.
But showing up definitely helped me a lot.
So that's the good part about design teams, A sales team, or let's say a product team going into finance might not make sense, but a design team somewhere fits everywhere. I just have this theory, right? A designer can walk into every room and learn something out of it and create and kind of build better designs out of it. And you go to a sales room, you understand how products are sold outside. This is how I automate experience.
Exactly.
You understand how people are marketing in the marketing room. Okay, how my HR functions, how my HR thinks. Okay, something in and around that. And there's always something for someone in.
Absolutely. And that helped me a lot. Like, if I were to redo all my 8 years, I'll do that a little more than what I've done. Again, I did not plan it, just organically happened. And, where I was at the speed dial for most folks out there at Razorpay, that kuch design chahiye, ye number pe call karo, Chetty will figure it out. That was the brand that I had, right? That helped me because people pulled me into conversations and I showed up. And little did I know that actually groomed me a lot. So I would give that as a feedback or, an advice to people that show up.
Wow, I love that. Like, even I love solving problems and just being available to any team in any department, and you can just solve, or try at least to solve the problem. Gives you such a beautiful perspective.
March 2020, Yes Bank had a moratorium. Obviously, a huge impact at a fintech company like Razorpay.
Yeah.
Got the news at 7 or 8 p.m. Raat ko. I was back home. Suddenly, I opened up company Slack. And then I saw these messages happening and opened Twitter and the entire industry was like, oh, Yes Bank ka ye hua, wo hua, and all of that. And immediately started thinking, let's map down every product that gets impacted. Let's map down every customer experience that get impacted. Got my car keys, drove to the office. I didn't know how as a designer I could help in handling the situation. I had no clue. But I started debating with a few people. And within no time, I was given the responsibility of you're responsible for all communication that goes out of Razorpay. Now, as a designer, I couldn't have thought of it. But just showing up at that time thinking, maybe there's something that I could do. I know a few things here and there that I can contribute to. More or less helped me in not just being a part of the situation and helping the larger team in figuring it out, but also that entire situation helped me instead, ulta, that if something large like this happens, a very huge breakage that happens, here is how your communications should be as an organization.
Correct.
On a normal day, I wouldn't have learned about it.
Yeah.
Right. But because I showed up that day, I could learn about it. I was able to debate with my, the marketing folks and the PR folks, etc. that I'm thinking about this email that should go out from Harshil, that email that should go out from Razorpay's handle. What do you think about it? On a normal day, this wouldn't have happened to me. Nobody would have called me up and said, Chetty, I want you to debate about this topic, right? People would have called me saying, ye product mein ye issue hai, design mein need a flow, need a change or whatever. Yeah. But just showing up that day, I learned something on content, right? So similar things.
Lots to learn from there.
Right? Just show up.
Talking about learning, how do you think that this is one great example, but how can young designers adapt quickly to fast-paced startup environments, especially in the earlier years of Razorpay? You probably had to navigate yourself very quickly across things that were moving, that can make valuable contributions to a company's growth.
If let's say every designer somewhere has an answer to the question, how is your work impacting the organization's goals and vision? That will solve for most things. Where they'll be able to question back saying that, शायद मैं जो कर रहा हूँ ज़रूरी नहीं है, और जितना मैं priorities को दे रहा हूँ शायद इतना ज़रूरी नहीं है, right? Like most organizations fail at that point. Like most people, while they know what they're doing, they don't know why they're doing it, right? Like, why am I doing a tiny change in this flow? Why am I required to do this much faster? Or why am I required to do some research in this, right? If you have an answer to that, and if you can easily map it back to what the organization values and principles and vision is, it generally solves for most things out there, right? Because why do conflicts happen? I'm sitting with a product and engineering person and Everyone comes with a different idea altogether. Everyone comes with a different approach altogether. But if the three of us are aligned on the reason why we are doing this is because of this, and the format on how we need to do this is this, because all of this somewhere aligns, there's no conflict at all, right? Generally, you see designers want to redo everything, put a lot of effort. Product manager,
Redoing is a new thing.
Redoing is a new thing, yeah.
I don't like this.
Yeah.
let's redo it. Let's do
Actually-
something big.
Yeah.
Right? And product managers are always like, I need to go to the market faster. I need to show improvement. I need to show outcomes. Engineers are always like, एक और library add करना है क्या? Can we do with what we already have?
Yeah.
Like if the three of them align on, we need to do this because of this in this particular way, and all of this aligns to the org vision, beautiful setup, right? Again, way too utopian scenario I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't think it's utopian completely. It's just, I don't think we need to go to a space where everyone knows everything.
Yeah.
But at least for the designers to know what their goal is, at least as the baby steps.
Yeah.
The engineers to know what their goal is, product to know what their goal is, and what is this 1-2 things that you should always be aligned on.
Yeah.
Is speed, because the biggest confusion I've seen across designers and other organizations is other functions or other organizations is the product team, like you said, wants to move fast, but the design team says that'll take time. Now the tech team, the product team is pushing for something. Tech team says that if you want to do this, I'll take time.
Yeah.
But in such a case where it's unreasonable for all of us, what is the sweet spot? If there is clarity on that sweet spot,
Yeah. Your values should help over there,
Correct.
right? That's the framework for making decisions out there.
Yeah.
Why do we need to do this? Because you want to move fast and break things.
correct.
The full circle.
You see what I'm saying, right? Like your values should basically give an answer to every question that you have at an organization, right? And while I did say that it's a way to utopian scenario, it somewhere seems to be. But again, the point over here is a lot of debates happen because none of them want to disagree and commit, right? And it's a value written on the wall, disagree and commit, agility and all of that.
Yeah.
But if you don't teach our employees as to how that turns out as a blueprint for their job roles, that's where things go wrong.
I think one thing about values, just to add to this randomly, is that sometimes, do you think value is, like you say, a utopian scenario? Sometimes a value, like disagree and commit, let's take that example, that sometimes might not be relevant to a certain scenario in a certain way. And do you think that, or all values should be relevant to every scenario? Just say, is that even possible?
It is possible if we did the value exercise in the correct way, where none of the values are contradictory to each other, where one value is saying work hard, the other is saying something else altogether, right? The 6 values that we have as of today at the current scale that we are at, they beautifully connect with each other. We want to be customer first. How can you be customer first? Is when you take enough feedback, right? What will you do once you're customer first? We want you to build things for them, for the customers, delight customers with the highest ownership possible. When you take that level of ownership is only possible when you have information handy. That's when you have to be transparent. When you are transparent and when you see enough things and you take that level of ownership, you will find a lot of traditional things. That's when I want you to challenge the status quo. No, I don't want you to be okay with traditional practices, right? Whilst being customer first, whilst taking the highest level of ownership, and while challenging the status quo, I want you to do it all with agility. I don't want you to be slow to the market. I want you to be super fast. When you do all of that, you will grow as an organization.
Yeah.
And that's where we say that Razorpay grows only when employees at Razorpay grows, right? So all of these values are interlinked.
Yeah.
None of them is contradicting to each other. One value for you to put in practice, you need to make use of other values, right?
Yeah.
And all of this beautifully aligns to the vision that we have, right? The only way we'll be able to set up a one-stop money movement platform is when we challenge the status quo, is when everyone at Razorpay takes ownership. All of this only happens when we are transparent with our practices, transparent with our information. Everyone is treated as an intrapreneur and not just as another job role, right?
Yeah.
All of this beautifully aligns, right? Now I want to take that beautiful alignment and figure out these subcultures and sub-practices and all of that,
Correct.
right? So I don't see a scenario where moving fast, let's say agility as a value, might not apply. I don't think. Like your values should be so set in stone and such beautifully aligned that there are no exceptions on culture. Like you can't just say that this person works great but is not great on culture, but work gets done quickly. Let's hire. That should not happen. This product doesn't align with our vision, but let's still build it and see. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
There are no exceptions to your vision. There shouldn't be any exceptions to your culture. If the moment you start building these exceptions is when things go wrong.
Yeah.
How long did it take to build the right core values and align them all? Like how many iterations did you
So
do?
beautiful story. This is again, these values were there in our minds, but never written down on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For 5 to 6 years ago, in fact, when the culture committee formed, one of the first exercises we did was this. So we did a lot of exercises where we went bottom up. We asked people questions on what is running at Razorpay that you like, what is running at Razorpay that you do not like, what is not running at Razorpay that you would want to see. Right? We've seen that happening. And we asked this question, what do you think the culture of Razorpay is? We asked engineers, we asked designers, sales, solutions, etc. Persons who've been there, done that, persons who just joining, people who just joined from a college, everyone. And we did a similar exercise top down. And it was so beautiful to look at both the approaches more or less 99.99% aligned. Nowhere a value came from the leadership which was way different or contradictory from the value that came from people.
Wow.
People also on again, leaders and people, wrong word to use. I'm saying top down and bottom up, right?
Yeah.
Like bottom up on the ground, every employee said, we have to be customer first. Leadership also said the same thing. We have to be customer first. We can't be people first. We can't be organization first. We have to be customer first. Everyone talked about agility. Everyone talked about agility. It's so beautifully aligned, and that hit us saying that, you know what? That's the connection that we're looking for. These are the values. They are not values of Razorpay just because we found them fancy and though they are sounding nice. You know, some other competitor in the market has similar values. We should also build on those values. That's not the case. They got beautifully aligned, and that put a lot of faith. You know, that made me happy back then also, because I was like, we're doing some good work. You know, if everyone is, without putting it on a piece of paper, if everyone is talking the same dialogue, somewhere tells you that you've done something correct. You've hired the right set of people, you've set them up for success and all of that, right? So that was the eureka moment for us.
I have a question, and it's a brilliant exercise, right, Chetty, that you asked both the leadership and everyone else. But in your case, I believe you are also lucky, right, that everyone aligned.
Absolutely.
Now, my counter-intuitive question to that is, if, let's say, the leadership says X and everyone else says Y, who do you go with?
Oh, I don't have a perfect. I'm glad that I understand that as a problem. But fair, you know, if let's say, objectively speaking, if I had that problem, I would have sat down with the founders, thought about, hey, you know what, there are completely different set of cultures that are forming, some of which are contradictory. See, there are X and Y could be different, which is okay. That situation can be handled. If X and Y are opposite, that's the worst, right?
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah, that's contradicting.
that's very
Yeah,
contradictory.
yeah.
Some people want to do something else altogether. Some other people want to do something else altogether, right? In that scenario, I would have sat with the founders, figured out what's the right approach for us and why. How does it fit in? Because it's not just about how these values are connected to the people, but how are these, you know, interconnected, and how is this helping in a larger vision? Then I picked those values and I would have run top down. I wouldn't have gone bottom up. Okay. Because culture is something that is not just bottom up, because what's the incentive for people to come together bottom up and then say, hey,
The leader was to bring in the...
Exactly. Right. It has to, again, I'm not saying that there's no bandwidth or no attribution to bottom up. There definitely is. But it is heavily top down. A certain organization runs in a certain way because their leaders operate in a certain way.
Yeah.
Right. I, as a designer, would take a break, not because my peer is taking a break, but because my leader took a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true.
Right?
True.
Like I would talk in a meeting in a certain way, mostly because my leader talked in a certain way. While I do take inspiration from my peers, etc., I'll blindly follow my leader. Oh, my manager is doing it.
Naturally comes to you sometimes.
Naturally, it happens, right? Like,
You know it's done to do it, but you know that this is, for example, this is how Chetty spoke.
yeah.
And you're not intending to speak like Chetty.
Yeah.
Just doing it naturally.
Yeah. Like, for example, now that I've met you folks, I'm sure in a room of people, I can definitely, with a high probability, I can identify people from Pineapple. Because I know you take decisions in a certain way. The client relationships, the vision that you have will somewhere percolate over there also.
Yeah.
Right. So I somewhere think that it's a lot top down.
Yeah.
So we spoke about so many different things, right? We spoke about a little bit on your life at Razorpay. We spoke about culture, HR, and design. Like, I think this is one of the most uniquest topics that we've rotated around, and we found it really, like a different angle towards design. And I love how everything's interconnected. So now I'm going to go into the rapid fire round, which is going to be like fun, short questions that are going to be there. And we want to see how you react to them and what answers you give us.
Yeah.
So let's go. Okay. What is the one thing that you still feel you haven't learned yet, even after being a leader?
Managing up.
Managing up? Okay, no, you'll have to expand a little bit on that.
Even as a design leader, I think I could have done a lot better in terms of managing up my product heads, my engineering heads, etc.
Right.
Because it was my responsibility to bring everyone into the same room and align with everyone. I think I could have been a lot better at it. And now that's even more important as the culture person, because now it's not just the product and engineering heads that I'll be working with. I'll be working with every other head.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
Yeah.
What's your biggest failure in UX design, and what did you learn from it?
I think in the early days, let's redesign everything.
Clients literally now tell, I think, design agencies that, listen, we don't want to redesign. We want to solve the problem that is there.
No, but I definitely realized it pretty quick that being a designer doesn't always mean you need to flex your skills. It's about you, your engineer, your sales, your marketing, your product. You're solving this customer problem. How do you solve it? Probably there's no design required also.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I realized it pretty quick.
What's the one thing that your team finds annoying about you?
I take meticulous notes and I send them. Like I have documentation of everything. Like what meeting happened on a Sunday or on a Monday 3 years ago. I can immediately pull my notes and say, "Ye hua tha us meeting." My team finds it pretty annoying. Kitna notes leta hai.
And I answered the question, what does your team find annoying about you? Okay. What is the most important trait you've acquired over the years?
I'm not sure. मैं so feel कि शायद मैंने कुछ acquire किया नहीं है.
But I think one thing I feel about if I were in your place to answer that question for you, I guess it's empathy. Empathizing
Could people.
with people, and now more specifically with everyone.
Could be that. And also, I thought of a cliched answer.
Tell us.
But be curious. But a cliched answer. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go there. Probably empathy. Yeah.
Yeah. Good job, pats on my back.
I feel like
I'm sitting there.
I would say the most important trait I detect that you probably have formed is that you've stopped looking at barriers. Whether it is in between roles, whether it is between problems, whether it is between people, you don't shut yourself off that maybe this is a wall that I can't break.
No, that is something that Razorpay by default instills. Like I said, right? You're thrown into an ocean and
Yeah.
figure it out, right? So that is something that I guess is true for everyone at Razorpay, where we are not happy with traditional stuff. For everything, we're like, kuch aur ho sakta hai idhar. All right? That conversation always comes up.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably something that happened.
Yeah. Okay. If you could collaborate with any designer, living or deceased, on a dream project, who would it be and why?
I'd like to work with hardware designers, primarily because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And I'd love to learn how experience comes into the picture. And also hardware design has a lot of cost for failure. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I can ship
It's like
an
print. Yeah.
I can ship an interface tonight,
Yeah.
take it back tomorrow, iterate on it day after, ship another version in 3 days. How can you ship a wrongly designed iPhone which cuts your finger when you hold it?
Yeah.
How can you take that iPhone back?
And it's always too expensive to
Exactly.
make quick iterations.
I want to be in that scenario once where cost of failure is so high that,
That you can't feel fast.
Yeah. Same is with the case with money also. With the touch of a button, money goes off your account.
Yeah.
I'm already dealing with like similar stuff. But again, on the hardware side, I somewhere have like a thing that,
साइकिल निकाल दिया बैठ नहीं सकते. Could be anything.
What is one myth about the design industry that you'd like to debunk here today?
I'll be cancelled with this, but
That's
designers have a wrong understanding of, I'm not getting a seat at the table. Like some designers that I met, their understanding of design getting a seat at the table is far more utopian than practical, where they think that the definition of a designer having a seat at the table means designers driving things. In my opinion, I don't think that's the definition of having a seat at the table. Having a seat at the table is design, product, engineering, and whoever the other stakeholders are, they have their own responsibilities in figuring out a problem statement and its solution.
Yeah.
And also very clearly outlined when and where can design come into the picture, both at an opinion stage, at a brainstorming stage, and at a solution stage. I think that's the right definition of a designer having a seat at the table. It's not about design driving things. Like design first company, I don't think most organization out there should be design first companies. Not every organization will be successful only if it's a design first company. And designers will be happy only if it's a design first company. It's a wrong thing. I think there is some myth around it. I'm guessing so, from my biased conversations.
I agree with you, to be honest. I agree with it.
Me too. Okay. If you had one chance to do something differently in your life, what would it be and why? It doesn't have to relate to work.
I would love to meet people a lot more often. That is something that I started recently in the last 2 to 3 years. I was so naive and so introverted that I wasn't comfortable in asking questions and meeting strangers. I'd like to be a lot more outgoing. And that would help me both personally and professionally.
All right. So yeah, that ends our rapid fire round. That was there. And now we're coming to the pineapple signature question. What does product design mean to you?
Solutions. So a very funny story. We were putting up an internal knowledge base, and every team, it's a tool where every team had their own folder, and the folder has a feature of an icon. You can put an icon. So engineering put an icon for some code. Sales put up some icon for speaking and all. And there was a folder for design, and I was with another design leader in Razorpay itself, and I was like, "Iska icon kya hona chahiye?" Like chemistry bottle, एक solution डालो, design a solution.
I have all the solutions that are there.
एक beaker डालो, blue color का, just liquid होना चाहिए उससे.
A potion.
Ocean, यार. Why this? A design is a solution.
Yeah. Nice. All right, so Arun, that covers our entire session for this episode. Thank you for coming down here. It's been a lovely, lovely conversation, very different direction. I think Rohan and I are so happy to be able to create something so meaningful out of today's episode. So, thank you so much for being here.
It was all mine. I think this was a great session, and I think my energy was a lot high primarily because, again, I was talking about design and culture and all things.
Yeah.
It's very personal to me, right? I love the conversation. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks.